everyone who joins us live and catches us later. So I'm letting it do its last steps here to get official over on YouTube. But I appreciate y'all being here, cozy in for conversation. All right, now I'm back. Hello. So I am Laura Jane, or LJ, and this is what I call the Tune You Show here on YouTube. And I've got my friend Diane Ambrosini here. Am I saying it right, Diane? Is it the S like a Z kind of? Ambrosini.
Yes.
Yes. And you're coming to us from San Diego. I know that.
Yep.
I love your yoga room. It just each time I'm on with you, it's just getting more and more just like coming to life more and more. Are you still doing things in there with clients? And
yeah, I do some things still online, so we have our studio set up as a studio. And then I am seeing private clients here a few times a week. So
okay. I love it. And do you have room for group stuff in there if you wanted to do a little group?
In actuality, I can probably fit 3 extra people in here with me.
Yeah. So a little intimate group. Especially if you're not trying to lay down, if you were sitting up.
Exactly. But it works. It works.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. And yeah, fun that it happens to be my birthday. And we were talking about that's how we met, as both of us being yoga teachers and yoga students for many years, right? And that we met going to the Ojai Yoga Crib years ago, right? It must have been like 15 years ago, at least, right? That we started meeting there. And that happened to always be on my birthday weekend, right? So that was my reason to get there, even as a mom. You can hear a dog barking in the background. She's excited too. But yeah, so we got to meet up at that Ojai Yoga Crib. I love that. And that we would just end up near each other, right? Because there were like 300 or 400 people there. And somehow you and I would always end up on the same track, right? Probably it was seeing Eric Schiffman often. It was when we would vibe up.
Exactly. Yeah.
The universe made sure that we would like connect each time, right?
Perfect.
So here we are again. And thanks for being up for this. I appreciate that you're someone who always says yes when I have invited you to do these conversations. And yeah, I just knew that it would be cool to hear from you on your latest thoughts and approaches with this thing we call fear.
Yes.
So yeah, and you know how I like to operate with not, having given you a pre-formed list of questions or anything, but just like, what do you think? What do you want to say? How do you feel? Yeah. So what does this bring up for you these days? This idea of fear.
It's interesting. It's a couple of things. Well, first off, I love the topics. This is why I always say yes, because it's always so interesting and fascinating, and it gets me, and I hope, everyone else thinking. And I think that's such an important part of our day. I know that sounds strange, but, we do such rote things all the time. It's like, oh, that's an interesting question I hadn't thought about. And this one was interesting because first, I think fear is an important part of being human. I mean, it is a self-preservation. Do we want to call it emotion? Yeah, I think, yeah. A reaction more. Reaction to a situation. And it's so interesting being humans, and we're so creative. And sometimes our fear is a reaction to something that really isn't there. or we have this interesting connection that there's something that doesn't seem to be there, yet it's there, and we have this reaction to it.
Yeah.
And just playing with that throughout the day. I mean, we really sat down and looked at being a human from whenever day to now. There's always been something to react to.
Yeah, right.
And to try to survive from, or
isn't that so true, right? That just from the moment we were born, that's been part of our experience.
Yeah, exactly. And just this this what do we do with it kind of thing, because there's so many directions we can take with fear, right? We can hide from it, which in our yoga teachings and yoga practices, it's sort of like, well, that's kind of not what we want to do. We want to address it. It's just a reaction. It's just a thing. And when we step back a little bit, we can really look at, oh, is this really something to be fearful of? Or is this not real? Is this just like a worry that I made up in my head? And, our yoga practices and, meditation and even just sitting, for Pete's sake, just sitting and like taking a couple of beats before reacting, like on a physical level, even that, we can either that fear dissipates perhaps, or we go, oh, well, yeah, maybe we need to address it a little bit more fully.
Yes. And I love that you're already bringing up a yoga approach to fear. And some people might think, what in the world would yoga have to do with fear, right? Especially if they think it's just exercises. So yeah, keep telling us what you mean by that, or what you feel like that is. Like what is a yoga approach with fear, and how does it more about how our yoga practices help us?
And it is interesting. I mean, you and I both know in the yoga world right now, there is kind of this, is it just asana? Is it just poses? Which actually, in a lot of ways, helps point us in a direction for on a mental, physical, spiritual, all those other slightly more esoteric levels that we can tap into. So when we're doing a physical asana, we should be aware of what's going on physically in our body and like noticing, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't put my knee in that position today or whenever. And when we can do that on a physical level, then you start to also notice, well, what told me not to move my knee like that? There's something else in us going, hey, maybe back away from that. I just like to use this of, hey, let's not do that. Because to me, that's that could lead down to a path of fear, right? So we like, oh my gosh, I can't move my knee like this. What do I do? I'm a little, it's like, well, no, we can't. There are plenty of things we can do on a physical level to not harm ourselves and stuff. And that in and of itself, when we continue our introspection throughout the rest of our day off our mat, which really, our mat is just like, when you were a kid and there was like this, you did the maze and here's the start and here's the finish.
Yeah.
And not that our yoga practice has a finish per se, but our mat for me can be the starting point where we get to go on this path and find out, what else goes on. I mean, I know that lately my yoga practices have been really good in helping me not, I know it sounds funny, not react.
Yeah.
Like, something pisses me off or whatever. And I'm like, instead of that knee-jerk thing, I get to remember, if we just take a breath, maybe this brings us in a better vibration or whatever you want to call it. And so then we don't need to knee-jerk and we don't need to cause a fluff. And kind of the same thing with fear, like, we when we are startled, most of us can feel it in our heart because our heart rate goes up and, other parts of our physiological being give us these signals. And, if it was, say, someone walked out in front of you while you were driving, well, you want that. But then okay, so then you don't suddenly go, oh my gosh, what if I had hit that person? Blah, 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 blah. But you didn't. So that those are kind of the practices we can play with on our mat, in our meditation, in our other spaces. That, okay, is this something to be, and I'm going to try not to use the word fearful of, but is this something we need to be acutely aware of so that we can react or not react to it?
Wow. Yeah. And how I love that, how you're pointing out that our yoga practice is like a symbolic place to be practicing how we approach life and respond to fear and realize the mind body connection of it. Yeah. And that I love that you talk about how it's about, it seems like two things, like a chance to be more in that introspective mode to notice, and then that we're learning to like regulate ourselves, right? Yeah. Mm.
And that, yes, exactly. There's, when we're younger, we don't have that, that ability as well to regulate, so that's why, and hopefully
Yes.
get older,
Ooh.
that shifts, but sometimes it doesn't.
Yes, I love that. But that could be the vision, is that as we mature, that
Yeah.
we are getting more graceful with regulating ourselves. And that absolutely includes, and a lot involves our choices to how we're going to respond to fear and interpret it, right? Because as you had said, it is a part of being human and part of our experience, no matter what. And that
Yeah.
there's this physical aspect and this mental aspect. But yeah, our biggest power is in choosing how we move through it, right? And a wisdom in that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then there's this other part of fear that I think, especially right now with everything that's going on in the world, is like, the fear of the unknown. And I love that you're doing this, of course, in and around Halloween also, because, as kids, especially, there's that, fear of the unknown thing, like, as you're going trick-or-treating, and the scary stuff that people decorate with and stuff. It's like, is there going to be a person there? Is it, and I think right now we're, as a collective, it seems, I don't know, this is how I'm feeling. And then with a lot of people around me going, our biggest, our biggest fear,
Yeah.
is not knowing what's going to happen next. What if this happens? Then,
Yeah.
and no matter what, we don't know for sure.
Yeah. Right. Isn't that what's so ironic about it? That our biggest fear is like uncertainty, but yet truly we're always in uncertainty. Right.
Yeah.
Even when we think we know. Wow.
Yes, exactly. And
Ah.
the thing, we as humans, we are pattern followers no matter what. But is it you got to learn about history so that you don't repeat it. But you know what? We still do. We still repeat it. We just have
right.
slightly different awareness of it each time we repeat some randomly, not necessarily good cycle, even good cycles, So I don't know about you, but I am, and it's funny, my husband and I talk about this occasionally. It was like that, the 4 o'clock hour, when suddenly you are awake because something triggered you in your dreams or what have you. And then at least it has no regulation whatsoever. And I'm like, it's doomsday in the next 3 seconds for sure. And then it is an interesting process to go, okay, all right, sweetheart, just breathe.
Yes.
Just, and I used to also get this kind of freak out going, oh my gosh, not only is this thought that invaded my sleep space, didn't it just not only disturb my sleep, but now I'm not going to be able to go to sleep again. And now I'm going to be blah, 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 blah. And for the longest time, I sort of let that take over.
Yes.
Not knowing how to, reel it in. And, and like I said, a number of people have said, oh yeah, I wake up at 3, or, it's always 2 o'clock.
Oh my gosh. I love that you're bringing this up as a universal experience, because I think you're so right. And me too, that so many of us are living in that, and that we have this dread that we start our days with. And it's almost like but like you're saying, when we were kids, something in us knew that we kind of liked this fear of the unknown. But now we're almost like spooking ourselves, because it's something we're doing to ourselves, right?
Right.
But it's interesting that there must be some payoff to it, right? Or I don't know, maybe, or it's just, at least it's a pattern. I don't know what the payoff is, but yeah. But I think a lot of us are in that pattern of that middle of the night wake up with these dreaded thoughts, whatever the thing is, because there's always something, right, that we could be worried or stressed about. And maybe sometimes it's the only thing. Maybe 99% of our life is great and there's just one thing, right? And then for sure, it can absolutely just start our day and dictate our day. And yeah, and that's why I feel like a lot of my mornings are about getting myself out of that place. It's like, oh
Yeah.
no, I don't want to start. So, but yeah. So, but thank you for helping us recognize that perhaps that's going on for a lot of people these days. And I don't know if that's always just been the human experience or if it's just like more than ever. I don't know. Right. I mean, what do you think? Do you
Um,
think that
Probably
this has just chronically been our experience and maybe will be, and it's just something we need to just kind of be aware of? Or
it seems
what's our hopeful prognosis here?
I, it seems like it could be a little of both, you know what?
Yeah.
Because it's really hard for us, to figure out, like, I don't remember ever waking up, when I was in my 20s or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember, that doesn't mean.
Hmm.
And so that's hard to say. And then, of course, if we ask, our elders, they're not going to remember either because, they're in this space right now too. And yeah, I love how point out how your morning practices, whatever they might be, are, even if it's just the ritual of making tea or what,
Absolutely. Even just that is
gives you
huge.
that little moment of a
Yeah.
pause where you can kind of gather yourself.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. Ooh, that's a good way to describe it.
I also like your point about, as we're kids, we kind of liked it. We liked
Right.
being scared.
There's
And
something in us, yeah, that wants that. And even still, a lot of us adults, and like we see the content and the scary things, that are popular, like on Netflix and such. And like something in us wants to visit the fear, right?
I think that, I think this might go back to that piece of, if we ignore it, if we try to hide from it, it will,
Mm.
maybe it's this, like, we were so brave as kids in a way
Hmm.
because we didn't know, we weren't conditioned to want
Mm.
things. It's like, well, let's go see what it is,
Yeah.
you know? And who was it? I don't know if I am not quoting properly, we could scratch this later, but as like, I think I read somewhere that someone like, Eleanor Roosevelt said, do something that scares you at least once a day.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then,
That's the thing too, right? Go on. Yeah.
and it's like, and then we go, well, what does scare mean?
Right.
It's like, is it a challenge? Because challenges can be frightening, and scary things can be challenging. So it's like,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
that no matter what, we don't grow unless we move forward. And so if we keep allowing ourselves to be literally drawn back and away from fear, we're not going to learn anything. We're not going to grow in any manner related to whatever that is, right?
Yeah. Right. It's like if we let it actually scare us, like how a monster looming over us could, where we might just cower and curl up in a ball and not face it, right? Um it's having such this different force in our lives. And yeah, I think it's interesting to consider that maybe part of us does like fear and want, and maybe that's where this whole like having challenge in our lives is helpful, right? To just kind of redirect that. We have a desire to be facing fear, let's do it in a way that's more constructive, right? And let's just recognize that that's, and even enjoy that, right? To be like, oh yeah, there's part of me that likes a thrill, and how could I let my life and creating be more about that instead of finding it in other ways, like torturing myself in the middle of the night with the worst thought, or
Yeah.
other ways we might. And I think it's so fascinating how you bring up the uncertainty as such a big piece of what can be scary. And then that part of us thinks we like that. And then that is the eternal actual truth, though, that the older we get, we definitely realize that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't, like,
Yeah.
even if we absolutely have the best plan in the world, right? So it's interesting how it's about maybe just accepting the truth of the human situation, or a version of the truth that
Right.
that helps us work with fear.
Yeah, because I think that's another thing that's been the issue. We've been conditioned through a lot of things to believe that, oh, this is how you do things in this linear fashion. And You know,
Mm.
you've studied a lot of yogic text and stuff. It's like you go, oh, for a while, my little linear mind was blown because I was like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then when you kind of back off and go, oh, it's because it's not linear. Perfect.
Ah.
Get it. So I think too that
Mm.
where, patterns happen more or less in a linear fashion, whereas life, yes, there are some patterns and some linearity to it, but in the biggest picture,
Ah.
it's not at
Oh
all.
my gosh, that is such a great awareness that life isn't linear. So we keep waiting for it to be or expecting it to be and then getting pissed off when it's not or scared.
That's
It's like such a misuse of our energy, right? Instead of just understanding again, like understanding it more on a metaphysical level, even, right?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Again, and that's something too that um, some folks are kind of afraid of that metaphysical space
right.
and especially in a non-linear fashion,
Ooh, uh-huh.
because there's plenty of metaphysical spaces that we could go into that are set up linearly.
Mm,
And then when the non-linearity pops up, everyone is shifted, everybody freaks out about it because that's not how it goes.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So and maybe that it helps. I'm thinking about how we hear from people who talk about such things like that we're moving into different dimensions right now, right? The 3D to 5D thing, or maybe into the age of Aquarius, or just like evolving in our consciousness, that then it kind of makes sense that we might feel a little bit like shaken up, as we realize things so differently, right? Than we were trained, that things are so different than we were raised to believe. And so that could shake us up and really scare us, right?
Absolutely.
Our
Yeah,
experience or empower us. I guess, yeah, I'm definitely interested more in the empowerment version.
exactly.
Mm,
And that thing of, if it doesn't turn out the way someone said it was supposed to, then not only are we fearful of the next thing, but then we feel like we lose our power
mm,
because,
yeah.
oh, I didn't do something right or what, and that's not necessarily.
Yes, right. And that's a way that we can weaken ourselves and slow us down so much, that judgment, right? Which that's, I keep remembering, oh, that's why non-judgment is such a principle of so many of these practices that we love, right? It's like,
Yeah.
because it really helps, because that judgment ties us up so much. And interesting to consider how fear is tied in with judgment, right?
Mhm.
And
Oh,
how
yeah.
much does our judgment play into our experience with fear and vice versa, right? Mm.
Right. I totally agree with that because it's all, I don't want to say it's a package with a bow on it, but it's
But it
definitely,
feels like that, right? It does. It feels like it's really connected.
yeah.
Oh, I see. It's 9:28. So in a couple minutes, Varushka will be coming on. Um, gosh, I'm loving this conversation. And I don't know, anything else that you want to say? I mean, I feel like one thing I'd like to ask you about is how do you feel like this whole idea that if you, like you were saying, Eleanor Roosevelt saying we should do something each day that scares us. And then I feel like we hear from a lot of people talking about creativity, that if something scares us, it might mean we're supposed to go towards it, right? So the opposite of move away from it. So what do you think about that whole thing at this point in your life as a creator?
It's funny, this point in my life, I've noticed that scariness of trying something new and moving forward into something is still there for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, gosh, maybe I just need to push through it a little bit more. And this also, of course, we can talk about this for hours and hours.
Right.
We should sometime.
100%. Yeah.
But then it's like addressing our shadow, addressing our fear and walking with it with us, going, oh,
Mm,
maybe my drawing, my whatever I'm creating, maybe it doesn't look what I think is perfect in my own mind, but it is something that was created and I did it. You don't always have to like things that you do. um,
Ah,
and to not be afraid of not liking it,
yeah.
because I think that's where we were also conditioned. Everything needs to be perfect. You need to know how to speak a language like, after a week. You need to be able to be this master painter when you just picked up some painting, materials. And just like letting the fear of maybe this is going to be crap be okay.
Ah, yes, that's where you're bringing us back to how judgment is involved, right?
Yeah.
And so recognizing that when fear is coming up, it often is about our being more open and getting out of judgment, so that fear isn't just another version of resistance, right? Or judgment trying to slow us down. Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Gosh, so good. And yeah, I feel like for sure we could talk even more about this.
But
And
I think,
I'm just keeping an eye for Verushka. But yeah, but go on. What were you going to say?
well, it's like, I think that's great that you're getting other perspectives on this from different people, because it's just like everything in our lives. There are so many um, different awarenesses that, like, gosh, I hadn't thought about that. Or, yeah, I hadn't thought about that in those terms, but it's exactly the same thing that I'm feeling, those kinds of things. And
Yeah.
so this is beautiful that you have opened up this forum.
Hmm.
So, the viewers get to experience all sorts of different people, and you're the nexus. You are the one.
Hmm.
Hey, let's start here. You're the start of the maze, starting
Oh,
where
well,
we.
yeah, maybe opening another one. And yeah, and then I do feel so aware that we all do have our own truth and beliefs. So in the end, each of us may still no two of us are actually ever going to believe the exact same on everything, right? Like I've been realizing that. So that's what's fun too, to think that we're helping others foster their beliefs, just kind of pick and choose what works for them. And oh, here, I'm going to bring on Verushka, and then I'm going to invite you to just tell us more about how we can follow you and anything you want to say. But I'm going to change Verushka to a panelist, and that should bring her on visible for us. And then, yeah, Diane will give you a chance to tell us what, let's see. There's Verushka. Hi,
Hello.
girl. I have Diane on here still, and I wanted to bring you on though. I
The sun glaring on me too much. I don't know.
think it's great. You look
Yeah.
golden. It's so pretty. And of course, you have great hair and style as usual. So yeah, Verushka, this is Diane down in San Diego.
Hi.
And Diane Verushka. So we were just finishing up, and Diane, I so appreciate what you brought through today. So yeah, will you share just how people can follow you and keep listening to you if they like? What's your favorite way to have people stay in touch with you, and anything you want them to know about
Let's
that
see.
you're
My
doing?
website needs updated, but it is Die for Yoga, DI the number 4 yoga.com. And then I'll on Instagram, which is kind of where I usually hang out and post things.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's die_4 yoga.
Mm.
And I'm just, it's funny. I'm just trying to get some things online now that I had planned pre-COVID. And so
Right. Same.
going. But if anybody is interested, I am working with my good friend Lenita Varshell, and in June, this coming June, we're going to be at Feather Pipe Ranch again doing. So there'll be more info on that on my site pretty soon. And
Amazing.
so
that's one of those classic retreat centers. It's in Montana or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just really gorgeous. So yes.
Well, thanks so much, Diane, for coming on and playing. I so appreciate it. I think you can just log out as you want, and then it'll be Verushka and I. But I'll be inviting you back for more soon.
All right, and have a beautiful birthday, my friend.
Thank you. Bye, Diane. Verushka.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much.
A happy solar return. Happiest of days.
Yes,
All
it
to you.
is fun to do this on this day. And I'm so thankful for you being up for this here and for you in my life as a close friend of mine. And you've been such an especially amazing friend to me lately. So I so appreciate all the love and that you're up for this because, as we've been talking about probably since we met. I mean, I feel like some of the things that really helped us bond over 15 years ago is like our interest in spirituality, right? And personal growth, and that we just have a lot of the same authors we love to read. And I love that we get together and talk about and even share our practices. And you've even turned me on to new practices lately. So I just so appreciate that you're up for this because I think you're such a wise, eloquent being and such an artist in so many ways. So I just am excited. I realize this is what I love to do is share people who inspire me and just our conversation and hoping that it could help enrich the lives of others somehow, right? Oh my gosh, the light is amazing. I love it. Seriously, you have like this it's like it feels like you have like God next to you or something. It's like it couldn't be better. It's seriously like the prettiest ray of glow. I love it so much.
Years, right?
So thank you so much. And yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I have no idea what this is about, but I'm here with an open mind and open heart. So
yeah, and really like how I like to do this is, as you already can sense, is not having given you a list of questions, right? Or even tried to tell you so much where we're going to go with it, but really just to kind of let it be intuitive and in the flow, like how it often is when you and I talk. But yeah, I mean, I'm just going to like kind of let you share whatever you want to share along the lines of this thing called fucking fear. Right? Like, what do you think these days? What's coming through?
You got it. Kidding. I mean that is a very open-ended question, right? To so many areas, from like your more like lighthearted fears to like your deepest, darkest fears, So like right now, like one of my lighthearted ones is just to practice getting into more of a flow state and just really following my flow. Because I have my morning practices, I have my things that I do in the morning that gets me level, that gets me, that helps me like live life intentionally, that helps keep me in the moment. And it's great. And I love it. But what about those days when, life is life, right? Those mornings that you don't really get to do that. I try not to like bug out on stuff like that. I really and it's funny because I was listening to Abraham Hicks. Well, I listen to Abraham Hicks every morning, but one of the things that stood out was there was this chick that was talking about how she does a miracle morning practice. And Esther goes, miracle morning? And she goes, yeah. She goes, well, I mean, maybe you can, but bottom line, she told her to change the name of that, because it's not a miracle to be in alignment. So girl goes, well, what about ritual? And then Abraham, of course, says, well, don't call it a ritual, because rituals are if you don't mean it, something about along the lines if you don't mean it. And so that really stuck out to me, because I was like, well, gosh, I love rituals. I mean, I'm all about like rituals and being ceremonial and like, having intention and to really like, make something out of it. I think that's the fun of it. But I got the message, and I think it was about really, again, following your own flow and being okay with if you like don't have the time to journal or to do your tapping, pick your cards, just do the things. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take an effing breath. It's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is right now where I'm at the moment is
Yes.
just to like follow my own flow. Like yesterday I had the most deliciously lazy day. Oh my God, it was amazing. and that's that is the lighthearted fears, right?
I think that's so leading edge to bring up though, and really absolutely speaks for me as well. And I wasn't even aware of it. Like you just spoke something that's so important for someone like me to hear, that those of us who want to be living more in flow and living more connected and in alignment and all these things, that there's a fear about living like that, right? There's a fear that's coming up that's like, it's scary because it's so different than when we've been trained, right? So now we have this fear of living, and then a fear of like, what if we're not there enough, like you're pointing out too, like if a fear about what if I'm not in alignment enough, or what if, and just like a fear around living in flow. Gosh, I think that's so leading edge and powerful to bring up. 100%.
And if like with you, LJ, you know, I know your mornings like are so powerful and important to you. But what if you didn't have the mornings to do your yoga or your journaling or your morning pages? You know, like what if you didn't do it? What's going to happen? And
Seriously.
that's wrap my mind around it. It's like the world is still going to turn without your assistance. just keep on going. And just because you don't do one step, nothing is going to happen. And I think that's just where the fear comes in.
Yes. Oh,
really want to get a little more deeper about it, because I mean, when I say lighthearted, it's because, you know, I always like to say it's not that deep. However, sure it is, right? Because it stems from a conversation of not feeling safe. Right?
Absolutely.
And so if you want to go more deep as darkest fears, I mean, yeah, there are times where I'm afraid to even be in the room by myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Night comes around and I'm like, okay, Mark's asleep, or goes to bed really early, and I'm like by myself. And for the most part, you know, I'm good. But there is just those times, man, it just kind of creeps into my head. And I don't know if it's because I'm feeling something. Well, I'm definitely feeling something. I've always been a feeling person. But I don't know if I'm feeling something that's like, if I'm feeling something around me, or if I'm feeling like something like around me is like going to happen. So in the end, like it's going to happen. I'm safe. I'm loved. I'm at peace. But I do have these moments that kind of go in there. And again, going from like, you know, the lighthearted fears, your deepest, darkest fears, it all stems from of not always feeling entirely safe.
Yeah.
And if I'm just being 100% authentic and vulnerable and open with you right now, then yeah, I think that is my ultimate thing is working towards that.
Towards just feeling safe. And I think you're really speaking like such a universal experience, and that's what I feel like you do bring through so beautifully, such this like, which I think is ironic because I know you're an air sign. I don't remember what your rising and sun are, but you bring in such this grounded, like salt of the earth perspective, right? Like 100%. What was that you said?
Rising.
Oh, you do have Virgo rising. Okay. Yes. We did. I think that's right. We talked about that. We have the complementary opposites.
That was crazy because I'm Virgo rising and I'm an Aries moon. And you're right. Aries rising and Virgo moon.
Absolutely. I can't believe I forgot that. We just talked about that last time we were together, huh? Yes. So, but this is like such a salt of the earth perspective you're bringing through. It's so like true and real. And it really is true that I think most of us also don't actually just feel safe in our bodies, in the moment, on this earth, being alive.
Yeah.
Whether we know it or not, right? We have this like fear within us and we don't even know it. And like, we're like doing all these things to try to not feel that, right? Too.
Absolutely. And I do little things here and there to kind of get myself out there, to do things that I would think are brave by doing like a little video of myself, which, you know, I don't like to do that. I mean, on the Zoom call, knowing that like you're putting it out there. I mean, sure, that is not really like something that I'm 100% comfortable with, but here I am. And it's just like little things like that, putting yourself out there, doing things that make you feel brave, from the littlest things to like the big things, you know? And yeah, so that
I love that you point that out too, that when we're doing those little things, it's doing the opposite. It's building the bravery instead of building the fear.
Yeah, I like to play that I'm brave, but not always, you know.
But that's a good way to say it. That brings it back to lighthearted, which I
Yeah.
do love that term lighthearted, because it also could remind us of, like, if we are like God or source or light, to be light-hearted, right, is a beautiful way to see it. But to come back to like playing at being brave, it's like, okay, I can handle that. I can play at being brave. You know, it's like, then instead of just being like, I have to be brave, that feels so much scarier, instead of like, okay, I can play at being brave.
Yes.
That's like so much more actually inviting.
And every day is definitely a day to like an opportunity to constantly love and accept and forgive yourself, because that's what I intend on doing is every day just saying, yeah, I have these hiccups and these things, and you know, but I still love and accept and forgive myself. I still forgive myself. I'm still easy on myself. I'm giving myself a break. And it kind of segues into this one thing that kind of stood out to me yesterday, because yesterday we had the new moon and we had the solar eclipse, and again, I'm really not into I don't understand a lot of astrology, like, you know, I don't understand a lot of talk. I understand basic. But one of the things that did stick out to me, I believe Colette Baron Reed was talking about this yesterday, and it was about this particular new moon that we have is not a new moon particularly set for manifesting and planting seeds, which you know, because we all know new moons are like, you write out your stuff, you plant seeds, but not this particular one. Don't ask me why. I mean, it got specific, but it was more along the lines, and again, this is not verbatim, about releasing forgiveness and things like that, which sounds a lot like a lot of full moon stuff, right? About releasing and forgiving, all that.
Yeah.
I found that really interesting. And again, following my flow, I was like, well, maybe I'll do some Ho'oponopono, you know, writing. And I didn't. I ended up binging, again, deliciously lazy. I ended up binging this one Netflix series called From Scratch. And it's about a Zoe Saldana. You know who she is?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, the big one that people are, she was in the, oh gosh, what is it? Marvel, the Galaxy something.
Okay.
Anyways.
Yeah.
She's an artist who meets this chef in Italy, and it's a love story that progresses the year 2000, and it just progresses into, and it's a beautiful love story. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It made me cry. I had a good cry. Now, Mark, of course, thought it was depressing. I suppose it would be depressing to some, but you know, I thought it was a beautiful story, and so I felt that was my little new moon cleansing.
For
sure.
I
had to cry, because sometimes things you, and I think it's important to just kind of like give in to those emotions and not having to just be so rigid in the ritual of it, and just kind of flow.
Yes. And you following your flow, letting yourself have a seemingly lazy day and binge watch, right? These things that we could judge ourselves for gave you exactly what you needed, like spiritually and emotionally and energetically, right? And even in your ritual, even though you didn't think you were doing a ritual, right? That's very Abe, right? That's what they're talking about.
And if you want to watch it and have
that does sound like something I could like.
Really is just how it just kind of all unfolded. So
gosh, you know, and I just feel like I had such this great awareness about what, like someone like you who, like you were just saying, you make it this priority to keep accepting yourself, to keep forgiving yourself, to keep loving yourself. That what that really does is you do bring that to others. Like you give me the permission to do that for myself more. Like you bring that energy to others. Like I feel like you're always really reminding others to forgive and accept and love themselves. But the reason that you're able to do that is because you're doing that for yourself. So you like just honestly are in that energy. You're not someone who is just saying it, but I feel like you honestly bring that energy, like you're like grounded in it. You're actually, so that's just, it's beautiful though, to see how the reason to be doing that is you're totally bringing it to others, like you're opening that up to others, like to actually keep, yeah, like you always are doing that for me, reminding me to like forgive yourself, accept yourself, love yourself, right? But it's like you couldn't have that effect on me if you weren't doing that for yourself, like, and just actually experiencing that yourself. So thank you for that. It's
Well,
big shit.
you're welcome. However, we're always doing that. I mean,
You're gonna bring it through.
in everything that you're doing, you're constantly putting
Mm.
yourself out there and you're helping people, tune into themselves. It's because it's your constant practice in your own journey,
Mm.
So, we're all mirrors. We all mirror stuff. We mirror the good. We mirror the shit. Excuse me. Sorry if I'm not.
No, I'm all for cursing,
But
especially.
it's true. It's true. We mirror all the stuff, and some of it is great, all that beauty, and then some of it you're like, ooh, what was that? I gotta take a hard look at myself.
Right.
That's
Sometimes it's a scary mirror.
or I can have like a weird interaction with someone. I'm like, okay, hold the phone, stop, like record scratch. I just, what? Okay, what did I do here? What's going on? Not like what did I do, but just what is here that I'm attracting this? What is inside of me that like I'm not seeing at the moment,
Mm.
And then I give myself, of course, the permission to feel whatever emotion comes up from that. Cause like we're here having a human experience. And I mean, that's what we do. And
Mm.
so, yeah.
I love that too, that I feel like I see you, someone, you seem, strong in your spirituality. And I love that seems to help you also value your humanness, because you've got this like strong sense of spirituality. And I don't know if this is accurate, but this is just like what I feel like I experienced with you. And that gives you also the strength to really be present with your human experience. And you really encourage others to do that, to do both. So that's just really cool. Like, how does that feel accurate, or does that just like, oh no, you got me all wrong, girl?
Oh, like, salt of the earth, you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I use that term a lot. I like to describe myself that way, no, that's not where Verushka salt comes from, but yes, I believe in like being a 100% authentic and real, and it's not always pretty,
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's part of being 100% authentic and real, which that's kind of adorably ironic too, that because one of your talents and forms of artistry has been in style, right, over the years, and that you're also here to remind us we're not always gonna be pretty though. Right, like I'm here to help you feel beautiful, but I'm also gonna remind us all we're not here to always be pretty.
Gotta get all up in there and see what's going on with you. Like show it to me all. I want to see all of it. And I love the quirks, and I love like the weirdos, and as they call it, because I'm very much like that myself. I do my best to embrace all those parts about me, because I mean, I have to laugh at myself sometimes. I do.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm just going to drive myself nuts. It's just,
yeah.
I strive to just, I like to feel good, and I just want to have fun. And I just want to be around people who make me laugh. I like to make people laugh. And I just like, that's how I intend on living my life. And I always tell like my friends, I tell my peeps that if it don't flow, I don't go. Like I say no. You know what I mean? Like I am all about the flow.
Yeah.
I tend to really live my life to not doing what I don't want to do. Now, does that make me a popular person in the room at times? No. Do I find that at times? Sure. Yeah. And I'm learning to be okay with that, because I have to. It's for my personal well-being. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, right? Maya. my kid, my beautiful baby girl, well, she's not a baby anymore, but she's always a baby. She's my beautiful 19-year-old. She, given her special needs, and she's not a typical being, beautiful, beautiful child of mine. She requires, a special set of instructions in life to go through it. And regardless, that's not even the factor here, because our children in general, right? I mean, you relate to this. Anything pops up with Maya, of course, like, fuck your flow. You know what I mean? Go tend to your kid. And those are the exceptions to the rule. I'm sorry for cursing.
I'm all for it. I like it. It works.
Earth, salt of the earth. It comes out, but that's how I tend to see it. And of course, there's the exceptions to the rule to my child. But yes, besides all of that, I really do. I do live my life that way.
Yeah, and will you tell us even more of like why you're so committed to this approach to life? Just even more, like if there's any more you want to say about that. Why? Why? Yeah.
I want autonomy in my life. It's important. I give it to my child. It's important for the people around me to feel like they have that with me, and then, us being together in this life. It comes from me not having that as a child. No control at all. I was controlled. I, grew up in an environment that, was not healthy. And so as an adult, and I mean, it led to a lot of destructive behavior in my teens and in my early 20s. But here I am, I'm approaching 50. And I just want to know that, especially since I am approaching the big 50, whatever.
Yeah.
Know that this part of my life, I'm living it the way I choose to live it. And are some days, easier? Yes. And are some days not so easy? Well, yes. It's all yes. You know what I mean? And I'm learning just to be okay with where I'm at the moment and embracing that. So,
yeah. And not fighting yourself or driving yourself crazy. Like I think he said, I love it hilariously too. Gosh. Wow. I love the direction this has gone. It's just so, powerful. And I think it's interesting how fear plays into all of this so much. And just the way to not be in fear or just not to be different about it, is so much of what you're talking about this like self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, self-awareness, right? And this like commitment to autonomy and intentional living. And yeah, it's just, I love it that it is like a strengthening way to just be human. It just feels very wise and mature, just like, encompassing the reality of things, even as, we get to bring in the spirituality. So it's just, yeah, it just feels like, basically.
Yeah.
So it really, and it's just like a very grounding yet leading edge. I love it. It's very everything that I want in an approach. So yeah, and one thing that I want to ask about too, and I guess we're getting closer to our 30 minutes. I want to honor your time, but how do you feel? Because you know how we'll hear about with our creativity and the things that we think we want to manifest, when we have fear about that often might mean we're supposed to do it, right? That whole thing of like, it tells us it's something that we're supposed to move towards if we have fear, or what role fear plays in our creativity. What do you think about that whole thing? Do you find that with yourself, that if you think about doing something, if it scares you, does that tell you should do it? I mean, do you think there's any truth to that, that whole thing?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I mean, I think it's all of the above, right? They say that when you go past your fear, that's where all the growth and all the
Right.
beauty, you kind
Yeah.
of go to the other side. And then there's the follow your flow. And so
Yeah.
that's where discernment comes in, right? It's like,
Ooh.
but what do I do? The question is, I mean, the answer is there is no
Yeah.
answer. It's about just like just give yourself a break. Take a breath.
Mm.
Now, I have to say, I got to thank you for turning me on to morning pages. It has really helped me.
Mhm.
For a while, I was kind of just writing out the same thing over and over again. But now I'm just writing it out like I'm journaling, like I'm talking to a friend, and just getting out whatever I need to get out. It's been very good. So I think what happens with that is that it allows me to, whatever blocked creativity I may have had inside of me, it's starting to
Yeah.
like loosen up, you know, it's loosening.
Ooh.
And I have so many ideas. I mean, I'm such an idea person. I think where I am working on is like, okay, there's times for the ideas, for the creativity, for the inspiration, and then
Yeah.
there's a time for the action, right? And then there's time
Yeah.
for the waiting. I don't know. I think it's all kind of intertwined. And so I just believe that perhaps give yourself a break, follow your
Mm.
flow, and
Yes.
just be brave.
Ooh. And I think that's really the beautiful like way to put it together is following flow versus fear, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That is a great way to rephrase it, right? Because we'll hear about like love versus fear, but flow is really even more descriptive, right? Because it gives you this vision of like action and movement, and I think it makes even more sense to say it that way. I love that, to be
Mm.
more in flow than fear. Like that's a goal I want, and that you're also helping us see that that's going to still include fear, right? And it's going to be about flowing even through fear, right? And with fear.
Mhm.
So
Also,
ooh.
approaching it from another angle. It's kind of,
Ooh.
I'll use a metaphor like, I play these little video games on my phone. I love it.
Yeah.
So a distraction that I
Right.
have to sometimes just turn off and just kind of do that. And it's fun.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, when I get to a level that I keep repeating, and instead of that, I just kind of look at it like, okay, I'm going to approach this level from another angle where I've been
Ooh.
working. It's just having me at a dead end. So I'm just going to approach it from a different. And I've noticed that when I do those, that's when I start to break some ground, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Same goes with like life and our
Yeah.
creativity is approach it from a different.
Ooh.
Now for me, like I've told you from the beginning, I'm following my flow. There are times even in my morning practice,
Ooh.
like I don't want, sometimes, you're not going to want to pick a card. Sometimes you're not going to want to do a little writing. You're not going to like, you just want to like honor by having that rest that you need, by just going out and just dance. I don't know, like whatever that may, approach it from another level. Sometimes just approach it from another angle. Do something to, as Mark likes to call it, it's a pattern interrupt,
Mm-hmm.
just change it up, tweak it a little bit. And sometimes, I mean, you'd be amazed at how much ground you break from that.
Ooh, that's so good. And again, so grounded and practical. And I love how you're using your play with the video game as a place to practice that.
Yeah.
And to just practice coming at it when there's a challenge or a seeming obstacle, or like, yeah, you're not moving forward, that it's always about reframing and reworking how you're approaching it. So that's such a great analogy. Yeah, it really is. And I think also you're helping point out something that I've heard like Abraham Hicks say too, that when we're in our flow, like I think I've heard Abraham Hicks say, if you were following your flow or your inspiration, you wouldn't do the same thing every morning. Like you wouldn't go to the same place, because, sometimes I'll get in these habits of like, oh, I'll go to the coffee shop every morning or something. And it's like, if you were really in your flow, it's not going to be the same thing every day, like that. So that's really cool to like free ourselves up.
From my end, looking at you, it seems like you do enjoy those things though, right? I mean, you love to get up early in the morning, and I mean, for all the years I've known you, this is something that you do. You go to the
For
coffee.
sure, for sure. Yeah. And it is fun to have to have my freedom within it though. And even each morning it's a little different, right? In which order I like to have that feeling
Yeah.
of flow, even if I have some discipline and right, or some structure, some rhythm to things. So
Well,
oof.
looks like you're living life according to LJ, and that's a beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, right. And wouldn't that be nice if we can just see that for all of us, that we could each find our own unique ways to create a life that feels like flow, right? And not being afraid of that. And that it's
Yeah.
going to be, it may be totally different than anyone else's. And it really should be, maybe. Like we both love Florence Scovel Shinn, right? And she'll talk about
Yeah.
we each have this unique place to fill in the world. So it would
Like,
make sense that our flow is going to look different.
I have Kim to thank for that. She, with that, our intuitive, that book club that we were doing, we did that book, and it was pretty awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
I just love running into all of these inspirational people.
Right. I was actually just listening to Flo. Speaking of Flo, Florence, right? I think I call her Flo this morning and thinking like, oh, on my birthday morning, I'm listening to Flo. So we're channeling her in here.
I love it.
Well, this has been so amazing. Is there anything else, first of all, that you want to say along the lines of fear? Anything that you didn't get to say, or any?
I don't think so. I think we've kind of. I mean, I've just been an organic conversation as always. Hello. Did you get cut off?